Imagine being placed in a home where you're supposed to feel safe, but instead, every day feels like a nightmare. This is the story of Mia, a bright and courageous 12-year-old who was placed in foster care after losing her parents. She thought she was finally going to find stability and love, but what awaited her behind closed doors was far from it. Her foster parent, a respected figure in the community, hid a dark and cruel side. Racial slurs, harsh punishments, and neglect were just the tip of the iceberg. But Mia wasn't alone in her suffering. A neighbor started noticing the bruises, the quiet cries, and the fear in Mia's eyes. One day, a shocking discovery set a series of events into motion, leading to a confrontation that would change everything. What happens next? Stay tuned to uncover how justice was finally served. Mia's days in the foster home were filled with fear. The woman who had promised to care for her, Miss Turner, was nothing. As Mrs. Carter comforted Mia, a car pulled into the driveway of Miss Turner's house. It wasn't Miss Turner. This was someone else, a man Mia had mentioned in passing. Mrs. Carter watched through her curtains as he entered the house, shouting loud enough to make the walls vibrate. Mia froze, gripping Mrs. Carter's hand. "That's her boyfriend," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. "He's worse." Meanwhile, Mr. Daniels called back with urgent news. He had gone through the proper channels and alerted social services, but there was a delay. It could be hours, maybe even days, before anyone showed up to investigate. Mrs. Carter knew waiting wasn't an option anymore. They had to act now. But just as she began to plan their next move, headlights flooded her living room. Miss Turner had returned. Mia panicked, fear written all over her face. "She'll come for me," she whispered. Mrs. Carter realized the stakes had just been raised. If Miss Turner found Mia here, everything they were trying to do could unravel in an instant. Miss Turner's car screeched to a stop in front of Mrs. Carter's house. The older woman quickly turned off the lights and whispered to Mia to stay hidden in the kitchen. A loud knock rattled the front door, followed by Miss Turner's voice, cold and threatening. "I know she's in there, Mrs. Carter. Open the door, or I'll call the police for harboring her." Mrs. Carter steadied her nerves and cracked the door open. "Mia's not here," she said firmly, trying to mask her fear. But Miss Turner wasn't convinced. She pushed past, storming into the house. Just as she reached the kitchen, the sound of sirens filled the street. Mrs. Carter had secretly dialed 911 when she saw Miss Turner arrive. The police pulled up, followed by Mr. Daniels, who had come to support them. Miss Turner tried to play innocent, claiming Mia had run away and Mrs. Carter was interfering. But Mia, trembling but determined, stepped forward with her bag and a small notebook. Inside were pages of notes detailing every cruel act, every hateful word, along with a recording she had secretly made of Miss Turner's rants. The evidence was undeniable. The police immediately detained Miss Turner, and her furious boyfriend, who had been lurking outside, was taken in as well after officers discovered his record of violent behavior. Just when it seemed everything had finally resolved, the unexpected twist came. Another foster child, one Mia didn't know about, was found in a locked room in Miss Turner's home. Frail and scared, the child's appearance revealed that Miss Turner's abuse went even deeper than anyone had imagined. It was a shocking discovery, but it ensured justice would come swiftly for everyone involved. As Mia hugged Mrs. Carter tightly, she felt a weight lift for the first time. Her bravery had not only saved herself but others, and now she finally had hope for a new beginning. In the days that followed, Mia was placed with a new foster family, one that welcomed her with open arms and treated her with the love and care she had always deserved. Mrs. Carter visited often, becoming a constant source of support in Mia's life. The other child found in Miss Turner's home also began their journey toward healing, surrounded by people who vowed to protect them. Miss Turner and her boyfriend faced serious charges, with the evidence ensuring they couldn't escape justice. The community, shocked by the truth, rallied together to support Mia and raise awareness about the importance of speaking up for vulnerable children. Mia's courage became an inspiration to everyone who heard her story. Though her journey had been painful, she found her strength in the end. As she sat in her new room, smiling for the first time in what felt like forever, she knew this was the start of a brighter future.